this is Mr. Wilk. Today we're discussing AR, so I brought the twins out. I got the Wilson Combat and the Centurion build. These are both my complete builds. And they may look similar, but they have very different functions. We're going to be discussing mainly the Wilson Combat build, but I brought the Centurion just for reference because there are slight differences between the two, and we're going to go over some of those. But stick around, it is going to be a long video because I'm going over every single detail that went into this gun, every little part, down to even the springs. So make sure you stick around if you like ARs, and we're going to be discussing the Wilson Combat. Alright y'all, so let's talk about this Wilson Combat build. So first off, this was my very first complete build. Every other AR I built was, partial, and it was for different customers, so I didn't really get to choose whatever components I wanted. I just put together whatever they had for me. But this was my first, from as stripped down as you can get it to a complete build. But let's start off. It is a long gun, so I'm going to be turning it down so you can see sections. I'm going to do the lower and then the upper, and then I'm going to do the bulk carrier group separately. But first, just to get this out of the way, this is the sling that I use for it. It's a Magpul MS1 sling with the padded sling there. It has a quick adjustment tab here. You just pull this and it'll shorten the length of it. Pull it or pull it this way. It's just quick when you wear it on your body. You can tighten it to yourself or loosen it up. So that's the MS1 sling that I use. Now let's tear this down, and we're going to start off with the lower. Alright, so these pins are pretty tight. First off, these are radian pins. That's another thing. I'll go over those again in a minute, but first let's start with this low. So from the butt, I'm using the Magpul UBR stock. It comes with its own tube and like a cheek piece here, so you don't ever have to worry about like a gap where your cheek might sit between the tube and the actual stock. You don't have to worry about that. It's always in place right here. It's pretty nice, and this system locks up really well too. But I got the one with the little storage here, and I'll show you what I keep inside. I keep a bore snake, a little bit of herring protection, a little wrench in case I need to take my optic off, or if I just need to get in, need a little tool for anything. Then I got an extra battery for my optic, and then a little pouch of Go Juice, if I can get it out of there. But it's just a little bit of some gun oil from Geisley. Or sorry, the ALG Go Juice. Geisley, ALG, pretty much same thing. But that's what comes with the trigger. So I just keep a little pack of this Go Juice in here in case I need some lube. So that's the stock. Now internally, I use the Geisley Super 42. It's the braided spring. And then it comes with their proprietary buffer, because the diameter is slightly different where the spring sits, so you got to get that for it. Let's see, the buffer retainer, pretty mil spec. I didn't really seek anything special on that one. On my other build I do have a titanium one in there, but the Wilson Combat lowers come with a little rubber piece that goes in this hole right here. But I use these Accu wedges. This is just to keep the slop between the upper and lower a little bit tight. That's what I got in there. Now, what I did to the rear, where this takedown pin detent spring sits, I threaded that hole and I put a set screw in there to keep the spring and detent from coming out. So if I ever took this stock back off, I don't ever have to worry about that spring flying out. That's one thing I do with all my builds, just to get that out of the way. I don't have to worry about that. And then I got the radian pins, mainly for aesthetics. They look really nice to me. When you have it closed up, it looks pretty clean. nice finish, nice black finish instead of like the parkerized look where it's kind of grayish brown color. And then let's see, I got the radiant safety, the 45-degree throw. Another thing I do is where that spring sits for the detent, I always add just a little bit of anything in the bottom. Like for this one, I put a set screw in there. It's just free floating in there just to add a little bit more tension, because I always thought these safeties had a little bit loose throw on them. So I was saying the safeties, these radiant safeties, I always thought they had a little bit of a loose throw on them. So I add a little bit of material down in the bottom of that hole so it pushes up on that spring just a little tad bit more, just to give it a little more resistance. So that's what I do on that. I put the Magpul MOE grip on here. I may change this out when they come out with their newest grip, because I prefer the pebbly texture on some of the other grips. Actually, let me see if I got one right here. So like this one here, I like that texture right there. I don't want this angle on this rifle. I prefer, you know, the more traditional angle on it. But I like that texture on here. And here's an example of the safety, by the way. It's a little bit soft to me. I prefer to have a little more resistance on it. But let's go further down the line. Inside the grip, I got the little CR123 compartment. So I got 2 little batteries in there for my flashlight. Let's see, the trigger guard is a Wilson Combat trigger guard. It's pretty clean, fills up this gap right here, and makes a smooth transition from the trigger guard to the grip, so my finger doesn't feel like it's digging into the side of the receiver. The trigger, I went with a Geissele SDE. I like the flat face on it. It's a super light trigger. It's a 2-stage trigger. Let's see if I can do this for you. It's super light. There's the take up and the break, and then reset, break. Really nice trigger on there. That's my favorite one. That's kind of what I'm gonna stick with. Let's see what else we got in here. So the bolt catch, bolt release, is the Strike Industries. But with this one, I put a little bit of gun coat on it because I don't like seeing their logo on there. So I just refinished it a little bit, did that to it. I went with the JP ambidextrous mag catch, mag release. And then for the actual button, I went with the Battle Arms Development Extended. But what I always do is I thread my buttons down a little bit more so that the threading goes down further. And you can see it's pretty much flush with the guard. It doesn't stick out so much. I don't want my button sticking out so much that it's easy to accidentally bump it and then I lose my magazine. So I usually, extend the threading inside the button, and then I'll shorten the arm on the actual release so that it all threads in there and sits down a lot further and deeper in there. And then another hidden thing that I do, another upgrade that I do for the mag release button, is I put in the enhanced spring, so there's a lot more resistance on this button. And the reason I do that is because I shoot rifles left-handed. So when this rifle's laying up against my body, when I have it slung, I don't want that button to accidentally be hit and then I lose my magazine. So that's why I went with that one. And that's why I usually go with a stronger spring, and then I shorten the button so it's not sticking out so much and it can be bumped easily. The finish on this is the Wilson Combat Armor Tough, which basically I think is anodizing with Cerakote on top of it. Nothing really special about that. but it's pretty good finish. It's smooth. I went with that because I like it to be smooth and consistent. The magwell is pretty standard. It has a slight flare to it, but not really. Not as much as like my M4E1, but it's a smooth magguard or magwell, and not really any snags with my magazine. It drops freely out of there. So there's the lower. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Yeah. So let's go to the upper. Okay, y'all, so first was the lower, and now here's the upper, where functionality really matters. So like I said, this upper and my Centurion build, they look similar, but they're very different. They're both 18-inch barrels, and they're the heavy profile barrels, so they're very thick barrels on these. I prefer having a lot of material on there. But where they differ is the material. This barrel is 416R stainless steel button rifled Wilson Combat barrel, and then they finished it off with their Armor Tough coating. Same like the lower and the rail and the upper. Even the dust cover is finished in Armor Tough, and then I went with their little laser marked 5.56 marking on there. So let's see. Let's start back here. I'm gonna go over the bulk carrier group separately, but for the charging handle, I chose the Aero Precision Breach. It's got some grease on there, don't mind it, but it's an ambidextrous charging handle. Really nice finish on it. I went over this. I reviewed this in a separate video, so if you want to see a little more detail on this one, you can check that video out. So that's the charging handle. The forward assist, if I have to have it, well, I'll put it in there. And I went with the Strike Industries. It has a little bit, different texture on the back here, a little more design. Because with this rifle, again, I wanted aesthetics. I went for aesthetics with this build, but also a lot of functionality. So I wanted that one because it looks really nice. I went with the Magpul M-Bus Pros, and you can't really see it here, but it's the long range version. So you can dial in the different distances, 200, 300, 400 yards, going out to, I think, up to 600. Really nice rear sight on that. And then I went with the M-Bus Pro in the front too. These are really nice solid sights. I love these things. And then moving forward a little bit, the optic is a Vortex Spitfire. It's a 3 times magnified optic, and it can do red or green reticle. And the reticle is etched, so even if you don't have it turned on, or you don't have a battery in it, you'll still have a black reticle in there, just like a normal scope, and you can still hit targets. So that's actually how I shoot most of the time anyways, with the reticle off. So there's that. It takes the those button cell batteries, I forgot which one it is, 2032s. That's what I have stored in the stock, the replacement for. So that's the optic that I chose to go with. Like I said, the dust cover is the Wilson Combat laser marked. Nothing really special besides it being the Armor Tough finish. Now, when I mounted the barrel to this receiver, I bedded it. So I'll probably go over that in a future video when I get a barrel in for my next build. But bedding basically is when you add material between the upper and the barrel or the receiver extension, and what that does is basically just kind of solidify the unit. So it just gives you a little more accuracy, makes it a little bit more solid, setup. And then the gas tube is a standard stainless steel gas tube from Wilson Combat. The Wilson Combat M-Lock rail is on there. And then I went with an Arasaka finger stop for my grip, because I don't like angled or vertical grips. I just like to have my finger on there just to, you know, hold it like that. And then that gives me good access to my tape switch, which is a Surefire. Let's see there. So I can just hit that. And then it also has an on and off button right here, tucked in there. So I can turn that on like that as well. Gas block is a Geisley gas block with the, I think, nitride finish on it. And then I also dimpled it. Wilson Combat barrels come with one dimple because that rear screw is always going to line up with the gas port. But I dimpled it for both set screws. You can't see it, but right here and here are set screws that hold this gas block on. So what I usually do is I dimple it, and then I'll throw rock set on the screws to make sure that that gas block doesn't go anywhere. And what that also ensures is that your gas port and your gas block are perfectly aligned. And I'll go over that in a future video. Again, when I get the material in for my next build. But that's a gas block. And then I went with the Magpul bipod. Now here's where I want to compare this one and my Centurion, because a lot of people, they don't like how the polymer feels on that Magpul bipod, and they say, oh, you gotta get an Atlas. Well, I have an Atlas too. I actually prefer the Magpul. The reason I went with the Atlas on this one is because this one is going to get pretty hot. The function of this Centurion build is high volume of fire. The function of my Wilson build is accuracy. So when I go over this one, you'll see again the differences. Like, for instance, this barrel is a Daniel Defense Cold Hammer Forge barrel, and that's one of the toughest barrels out there. So, you know, if you're shooting a lot, you want a Cold Hammer Forge barrel. But if you're shooting for accuracy and you're not going to get your gun too hot, the stainless steel barrels are great options. So, yeah, so again, the bipod is pretty good. I like how it has a quick unfolding. And then right here, you can just change your adjustments. And then when you fold it back, you can just hit that button. But moving forward a little bit, I got the M-Lock sling, QD sling point. Just put that on there. And for my flashlight, I use the Arasaka mount. It's a 45-degree mount, so it's on the, let's see, like the 7 o'clock position of the rail. But then where my flashlight sits is on this, it's on this 6 o'clock position. So a lot of people, you know, they have it on either the right or left side. I like it on the bottom, right in line with my bore. So that's what I chose to do with this one. Right here is a battle tested equipment, BTE USA. This is actually a gas block, but I don't use it as a gas block. I use it just as a front sight holder, because there can be a lot of flex, as you can see, between the barrel and the rail. So if you have your front sight mounted on the rail, there's a chance that you can flex that rail and lose a little bit of accuracy. But if you have it mounted to your barrel, it's gonna always have the same reference point when you're shooting, no matter how much pressure you have on the rail. So this BTE gas block is aluminum. It's pretty lightweight, and its only purpose is to serve that front sight, just to mount it up on there and have it secured to the barrel rather than the rail. There's a slight gap in between the two to allow for movement, and that's just something I do. I don't do it to all my guns. I just do it to this one, because, like I said, this one's built for accuracy. So I want to be able to shoot accurately with my iron sights and my optic. which actually it turns out I'm a pretty good shot with my iron sights, and sometimes I shoot better with those versus my optic. But of course the optic is more fun to use. And then the flashlight is a Surefire Scout. It's a dual fuel model, so I can use the CR123 batteries, or what's the other one called? The 18650 batteries. That's what I have in here. It's like a solid battery. I'll show you a picture here. It's a solid battery. You can charge it directly to the battery, or you can use the CR123s. So that's what I chose for my flashlight. And then on the front is a Wilson Combat Q-Comp. It's mainly a flash hider, but also serves as like a slide compensator. You can see ports on the top and sides, but no ports on the bottom. And then instead of using a crush washer, I mounted it with shims. I just timed it and mounted it with shims, got it torqued down properly. Threw a little bit of rock set on there, not too much, because that is a pain to get off if you ever need to get it back off. So just a little bit of rock set to hold it in place. But that's the upper. And now let's get into the bolt carrier group, the heart of the rifle. Okay, y'all, so what I chose for my bolt carrier group, I went with the Sharps Rifle Company. I love these bolt carrier groups. I actually have another one here for my next build. I'm just collecting parts until then. Oops, use those. I'm just collecting parts until then. But this is the packaging that it comes with. You can read up on this if you want to. You can pause it, read up on it a little bit. Some of the stats on it. But basically, I went with the bolt carrier group from Sharps Rifle Company, but I went with a JP bolt. Now, let me tear these down and I'll explain it. So the bolt carrier group, this is pretty much the toughest bolt carrier group out there. It's made from S7 tool steel, and what that will give you is a lot more toughness versus what the mil spec is. Mil spec usually uses Carpenter 158 on the bolt, and then they'll use like a lesser steel on the bolt carrier group, or the bolt carrier, and then they'll have like a phosphate finish or parkerized finish or something like that. But this one is actually DLC coated, and DLC stands for diamond-like carbon. So when you have this S7 tool steel plus the diamond-like carbon, and then what they also did was enlarge this rear portion so you have it more balanced inside the upper, a little more surface area to contact, and then they also increase the surface areas on these points here. And this is where it actually makes contact with the upper when it's riding. You can see a little bit of wear there. So DLC isn't, the perfect indestructible finish, but it is a very tough finish. And this finish is very smooth on here as well. Now, what I also did was I laser marked, you see these little notches right here at the 12 and 6 o'clock, 12 and 6 o'clock. I took a laser and marked those little lines on there to make sure every time I'm cleaning my gun, I make sure that these screws don't back out. They are staked. You can see they're staked on the sides here, where the little metal is pinched in. But just to have a witness mark, I put those laser markings on there just so I always know, just at a glance, how this thing's doing. So I did that to it. I also put an arrow for the cam pin to make sure it always goes in facing the muzzle, because you can put these in either way, but it's best to put them in the same way every time. So I put a little laser mark. Some people put a dimple. You can put whatever you want on there just to make sure it goes in the same way every time. That's just a little extra tip there too. Now as far as the bolt, this is the JP bolt, and it's made from SAE 9 310 steel. I don't know much about steel, but it's pretty tough stuff. It's what they use for Formula One racers, the transmission gears. That's what they use. That steel, they use that for their transmission gears for racing cars. But yeah, it's pretty tough stuff. And they also went with a DLC coating. This one is a little more smooth. You can see my belt here is real, like the finish on that is just perfect. I don't even show any wear. I've shot this thing a bunch of times, but there's no wear on there. But what I also did is I put an improved spring in here. But yeah, there's the bolt face. Now these come with a one-piece gas ring, but it's a little too loose, the one-piece gas ring. So I took them out and I just put the standard gas rings in there, so it has a little more grip inside the bolt carrier group. But yeah, I love the finish on this thing. And when you have that DLC coating, if you've shot ARs, you know this part right here is pretty hard to clean. The actual piston part of the bolt. But I got my little rag here. We're gonna see what happens when we wipe it. Again, this is just dry. And look at that. Smooth. A little bit of crustiness around the edge, but that'll easily come off. This bolt is definitely one of my favorites. I gotta get another one for my next build too. I'm gonna swap out that bolt that comes with it, the SRC bolt. Not that those are bad bolts, it's just I want something a little tougher. So the combination of the SRC bolt carrier group and the JP bolt, to me, is the toughest combination that you can have. So that's what I went with on mine. But now let's get into the Guntuber shoutouts. Today I'm gonna give this one to the ladies. So first off is Miss K. She's a very straight up, no nonsense. She's in some of the chats. She does a lot of, whenever I'm in a group chat or like a live stream chat, I'll see Miss K in there. And she's been in some of the videos too. Like I said, very straightforward, very serious, and she's very knowledgeable about firearms and firearm use. And then another one is Carbon Q. She doesn't have any content out yet. She has an Instagram and a channel on YouTube. I'll post links in the description for both of these channels. But those two are very knowledgeable ladies. Carbon Q, she's a little quiet, but trust me, she knows what she's talking about. And you don't want to mess with Carbon Q. So yeah, this Guntuber shout out goes to the ladies, Miss K and Carbon Q. Make sure you subscribe to them, check them out. Links will be in the description. And I'll see y'all on the next one when I do my Centurion build. So see y'all next time.